Hi, welcome back to Speaking to Students. I'm Johnny Jenkins, and in this series we meet remarkable students who do something different, something extra alongside their degree. My guest today is Jess Smith, who's a third year liberal arts student majoring in politics at King's College London, involved in choir, musical things, musical theatre. We're going to get right into it and say hi to Jess. Great to see you today. Jess, liberal arts, it's one of those names you hear a lot. You hear a lot in movies, but what does it actually mean?
So essentially, I'm probably the best person to talk to. I am an ambassador for the course, but essentially it involves instead of studying like one straight subject, it's you kind of pick and choose from across the arts, humanities and social sciences. So it kind of allows you to really mould the degree in a way that you want to. So I can study anything from like film history to Arabic to I had a class on Taylor Swift the other week, so you can really just pick and choose whatever you like.
I said to you a moment ago, it sounds like quite an American degree title, and I suppose it is a more sort of stateside way of looking at things, where you don't just pick one course. So I study politics, and that's all I do. You don't just pick one course, but you actually have a sort of a bit of everything.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, so I actually happened to study abroad in the US while I was in my second year, and there was literally no difference. It's very much a kind of pick and choose what you want, and I think it's a good thing for the British system to adopt that kind of like flexibility of study.
It's interesting, and it's like you say, it is a different approach, and maybe we'll see more of it. But Jess, as always, I'm far more interested in the other stuff you do alongside the degree rather than the course itself. And you've already there mentioned that you're a course rep at your university. You've done your time in America and a year abroad. But let's talk about singing, because you're in the choir, you're a choral scholar. Everyone knows what a choir is, what it looks like, what it sounds like, but what does it mean when you say choral scholar?
So the reason it's called a choral scholar is because it is seen as something that is rigorous and just as academic as the kind of main study program. That being, it's not counted as like a student group or activity group. It's not part of the union. It's run by the college, and it's kind of like a job, to be honest. So we get a stipend for working and singing for the college every week. So we work with the chaplaincy because it's a Christian university. So the chaplaincy is kind of like the sort of centre of religious kind of life at King's, and we work with them and we sing in the services, and we do lots of other things representing King's at various functions and around the world.
And you didn't just start singing when you came to university. It's something you've been doing for quite a long time.
Yeah, so especially with choirs, my whole life really. I was raised in the church, so singing as part of worship was something that I've done, since I could walk, basically. But I was really fortunate to go to a school two schools that had really amazing music departments that were able to support me and had, kind of student activity going on as well. So I was able to kind of build up my singing skills there too.
That's so good to hear, because, everybody sort of sings in the shower, or like you say, maybe sings at church or whatever. But if you can build it up more and more, you can make it into something that's such an integral part of your university course. Did the choral scholar sort of availability, the fact that King's College London has a big focus on that, did that draw you to the university?
So it definitely did. There are lots of amazing universities up and down the country who have liberal arts courses, and I looked at lots and lots of them. But King's was the only one that had that kind of like flexible degree course combined with this kind of really kind of tough choral life, because I suppose when you kind of hear the university choir or choral scholar, you kind of associate it with Oxbridge, right? They're kind of the big players in the university choral scene, and King's was kind of one of I was looking definitely to be in a kind of city environment as well. That's another thing that that King's really, that's what sold me. So having all of those three elements, a degree that I liked in a city, or like, in an environment that I wanted to be in, and this kind of, choral thing on top, that really sold it for me. And the choirs are hard to get into, because these are all kind of, because you do, you know, get paid for them, they're quite rigorous in terms of auditions.
It sounds to me like the sort of puzzle pieces just came together, and it made sense for you to go to King's to do liberal arts. Let's move towards theatre as well, because not only do you perform in your singing, but you're also involved in, you've got your own theatre company, and you're also involved in musical theatre. Now that must be quite a lot of fun. You're a producer and performer, right?
Yeah. So it's quite cool. Get to kind of create some of my own work, but also, you know, work along others in the student community, and perform, you know, more well-known shows and things. So yeah, again with the musical theatre, it just sort of, it's something that I happened to sort of slide into when I, you know, got involved in singing. I got involved in choirs, and I'd always kind of acted as well. Again, I said I happened to go to like a really great primary school for music. They were also really good for drama as well. So I started, you know, acting in the school plays and things from quite a young age, and then I ended up going to a drama group. And then I realised that there was also this community where I could kind of combine my love for acting and singing, and, you know, also love, but, you know, not perhaps talent for dance, sort of combine all those things in one, and that's musical theatre. So I got involved in that at first in secondary school. We were really fortunate to have an amazing head of music who saw the value in extracurricular productions. So I started doing that when I think we were in year 10 when I started doing that, and then after those experiences, I knew it was something that I wanted to continue on into university.
I suppose, Jess, where you've got the really serious, like the choral singing, that's professional, it's a job in itself, and then you've got the musical theatre stuff, which not only is challenging, but it's probably great fun to do. You're also involved in the theatre company itself, which your friends started up, The Voice Matters. Tell us a little bit about that.
So The Voice Matters, it is kind of grew out of King's, but also UCL students. They sort of band together to create this company called The Voice Matters, because they kind of wanted to, they sort of recognised and wanted to give a platform to voices who, certainly in theatre and in mainstream society as well, didn't have a platform to kind of air their experience and their stories. So I got involved with them because so I knew a few people who were involved in its founding, and they happened to be putting on an Edinburgh Fringe play. So they were auditioning, and I got involved, and I got cast in the show, and we went up to the Fringe for the summer, and one thing led to another, and I ended up actually becoming like a social media assistant and a producer for them, which is so cool to be able to say that I'm involved in that kind of like an original theatre company. Yeah. And
you got to perform at the Edinburgh Fringe. What was that like?
One of the best experiences of my life, hands down, one of the best summers, because you're just you're meeting all of these like-minded people in one space, and it's theatre from 9 a.m. till 6 a.m, you know, and you're surrounded, by all of these kind of, you know, creatives, and, you know, I don't know if you've ever been to Edinburgh during the Fringe, but they completely transform the whole city. You know, things that were perhaps like a square with a fountain become like a huge pub garden, and it's all of these kind of young, like-minded people. I actually ended up, you know, like staying with some other people that I'd like met there for a bit and I helped out with their kind of merch stalls, and it was a whole kind of experience in itself. So I gained so much from that, and I would, if anybody asked me, I would thoroughly recommend going to the Fringe. Oh,
it sounds like so much fun. It's definitely something I want to do in the future, because people just rave about it so much. It really seems to be quite special. So not on top of all the music and the theatre and everything else we've discussed, Jess, because as usual with people that do loads of stuff alongside their degree, you're talking to them and then you realise they do another thing and then another thing, and then they remember they do this, and it piles up, and you realise that you're so busy alongside the degree. But we've got one more thing to cram in: the fact that you've got your own podcast, and more people who are students or sort of in their 20s or whatever are turning to creating their own podcast and getting their voice heard. Why was it that you started yours?
So this kind of stems off the idea of production, you know, so I got open to the world of like content creation and content production when I first got to uni, and kind of learnt about producing and things. And initially this was in the form of remember I said I worked as a course rep. I did a bit of content creation for that, but also from musical theatre, you know, I got into producing through the society there at King's. And when the pandemic hit, I just sort of started thinking like, you know, theatres were closed and university students weren't able to perform or get involved in anything because, you know, it's seen as a recreational activity, right, rather than a kind of a job per se. So I was quite sort of hungry to find another way to be able to produce some meaningful content while I wasn't able to leave the house, really. So I'd kind of always thought about podcasts, but I wasn't really sure what it entailed. Like I hadn't really like stepped into that world, but like many people, you know, being stuck indoors all day, podcasts became quite a cool thing to just be able to, you know, like I'll be cleaning and have a podcast on, or, you know, have one on when I'm going for a walk. Yeah, I sort of started to get listening to these, you know, people who brought their experiences to the mic, and I thought, hold on, I can do that. I'm going to do that. So I did a little bit of research into kind of what that would entail, and then I just thought, yeah, let's go for it.
And as I always say to people who are keen to get involved in radio or podcasting or some form of audio production, that the more you listen, the more you pick up from those podcasts or radio shows, and you just become almost sort of naturally, you just become a better presenter yourself. So definitely recommend, if someone wants to get involved in audio, to consume quite a lot of it yourself, and you'll start picking things up. Jess, what would you say to someone who is perhaps doing a degree now or about to start a degree and wants to get involved in some extra stuff? Maybe it's something performance related, but aren't sure if they'll be able to manage it alongside their course. What would you say to them?
A big thing for me certainly was organisation and time management. If you know that your time is scarce and that it's something that might worry you, then having a routine and making sure that you block out your time is so important, because, you know, being able to look ahead and know exactly that you're going to meet this deadline, you're going to have this done. Like, you know, no matter how much you do in your, you know, in your extra time, your uni is always going to expect you to meet those deadlines, right? And so making sure that you are able to kind of allot your time wisely, and in advance as well, I think is really important, because I remember back to my first year, I've learned a lot over the last few years, but certainly in my first year, I wasn't very study focused, and it kind of meant that I was leaving things very much to the last minute, and I was like scrambling to get them done, and it felt like I didn't have any time, right? Whereas I just didn't manage it well, and I think that's the difference.
I'd agree. Once you've got your time management sorted, and your sleep as well, once you've got your sleep and your time management sorted, you are away. You definitely are. Jess, thanks so much for talking to me today. You certainly are a remarkable student. And if you like what you see, remember to like and subscribe.